Well, hi, this is Ron Rogers, and this is Aviation Adventures with Captain Ron. Now, I had one of my viewers ask, well, how much has it changed in the 53 years ago that you got your private pilot's license? How much have things changed since then? And I go, that's an interesting question. And my mechanic, one of my mechanics, is working on his private pilot. So I asked him, I said, well, how many hours do you need to get it? And he said 40. And okay, that's a Part 61 school. Part 141 that I went through under the Air Force program where they pay a local FBO to teach you how to fly. It was 35 hours, and I took my private pilot check ride at 35 hours and I actually passed it. Oh, interesting thing at the time, when I was a kid back at 10 years old, we had the field house would have this general, all the things you could buy in the city sort of day. And they actually taxied from the Iowa City airport, couple of miles actually, a tri-pacer up to the field house, put it in there, and they had this sign that for $600 you could get your private pilot's license. $600 to get a private pilot's license. I'm thinking, you gotta be kidding. I mean, just a regular car license is only a couple of bucks. Why do they charge 600? Well, I didn't understand the full implications, and now you're thinking, $600 to get a private pilot license. I mean, that was all the instruction, aircraft rental, and everything. Yeah, not a bad deal. Although, if you do the math for back, back in the '60s, it's fairly expensive. But okay, so 40 hours. I thought, well, that's fairly. I mean, that's kind of what it's been, And then I started to look into it. Well, okay, a couple of things. You need 10 takeoff and landings at a tower-controlled airport. I never had that. In fact, I flew out of Iowa City, Iowa, Cedar Rapids, 25 miles to the north, tower-controlled airport. Never flew there the entire time I'm getting my private pilot instruction. Never did, just flew locally on Unicom and that. And until a friend of mine who also had just gotten his license out of the program, he and I decided, I had all of 37 hours now. He's one of the first people I took up. The very first person I took up for a ride in the airplane after I had my brand new ticket, I immediately took my wife up for a ride. She was my first passenger. But Russ and I went, and we went up to Cedar Rapids, and that was my first tower experience. But I was with Russ, and he had done it, I think, once before. So, hey, experience. And my next tower experience was going to an air show in Moline, Illinois. And I flew in there. Let's see. It was really, really busy. I put in my logbook. And I had about 41 hours of flight time. And I went into an air show with everybody and their brother flying around there. The Blue Angels put on. So it's a pretty good air show. But, okay, well, what do you have to have? Well, 3 hours of cross-country flight time. Well, I had 4. Okay, not too bad. 3 hours of night flight training. At least 10 takeoffs and landings at night. Never flew at night. Not one single tenth at night. In fact, after I got my license, I joined a little club with the Cessna 150. That's the picture on the front there. Our most senior member unfortunately crashed and killed himself and destroyed the airplane. So that airplane is no longer in existence. But that was my first flying club out of a little unlit grass strip. And by the time I made my third landing at night, I decided, man, I really need a checkout in night flying. So, okay, I get that. I'll tell about that in just a second. So, I mean, that's nice they require that. And for me personally, nighttime should virtually require an instrument rating, because if you're going to inadvertently fly into a cloud deck, it's going to be at night, because you're not going to see it unless you've got a nice moon or something like that, and then it's not quite like night flying. And I flew up in the mountains, actually, north of Edwards, with the vice commander of all people, who said, let's turn off all our lights and just fly up through the mountains. So we turned off everything in the T-38. We were in our own special airspace, so there's nobody up there except us, and we went flying up through the mountains at night with absolutely no lights on. It was kind of a different experience. I hadn't done that, and one of the other test pilots showed me night aerobatics too, which was, okay, I won't go into that. That was a little more interesting with the stars and the lights, but I digress. Okay, so, well, I had that. So I had exactly 20 hours of dual and exactly 15 hours of solo when I took my license, and I got it. Oh, other thing, you now required 3 hours instrument or under the hood. Well, we did that. There was no requirement at the time, but I had 1.5 hours. That was my total hood time. Okay, well, okay, I get in this club, and it's a 150. Well, we flew the Pipers, the PA 28, whatever it is. The what is the little thing called? It is a um, PA 28-140. And oh, by the way, I soloed with 8.8 hours total dual. That was when I soloed, and but I'd never done spins. And I'm getting ready to go. I brought my wife along. We're now in the 150, and we're going to go to a little park for a picnic. It's called Geode State Park, and yeah, it's back on my very first page of my new logbook, and the park doesn't exist anymore. But let's see, I had 45 hours of time, and I'm getting ready to go. We got the picnic basket in the back seat, and we're going to go flying down this little park, have a little barbecue, cook some hot dogs, and then fly back. And I say to the instructor, the guy who just checked me out in the 150, I said, "Hey, I want to do spins sometime. I've never done spins because you couldn't do them in the Piper there." So he says, "Oh, nothing to it. Go up stall, put some rudder in, do a quarter turn, half turn, three quarters of a turn. Just feel it out." So my very first spin, we're coming back from the picnic. The picnic basket's in the back. This is the Dunning-Kruger effect, which my dad used to call 10 cents worth of knowledge. Well, the Dunning-Kruger came out in 1999. My dad had already been dead for 3 years, but he had a phrase, 10 cents worth of knowledge. And basically what Dunning-Kruger is, you're not smart enough to know how stupid you are. And that was basically my position early on, because they gave me the private pilot license. Well, I earned it, okay. But I had a private pilot license, and I didn't feel very competent, but they gave me the license, so I must be competent, right? Wrong. Okay. A couple things, and I'll talk about that. But okay. Okay. So I didn't know enough to know how much little I knew, and guy said go up and do spins, so we did. So we're coming back, picnic basket in the back. Didn't know that you really shouldn't have that, something loose like that in the back, and probably threw the CG towards the rear a little bit, which doesn't help in spins. And I say to my wife, I say, well, you want to do spins? And she goes, sure. That was the last time she'll ever do, well, any aerobatics with me. She's smart now. She doesn't do that. But it wasn't a problem. So I did a quarter turn. I did a half turn. Then I decided things are going so well, I'll just do a full turn. And I did a full turn. I come out and she says, what happened? And I go, what do you mean? And she said, well, we went past three quarters of a turn. I thought you'd lost control of the aircraft. Okay. I taught in T-37s in the Air Force. I taught spins, and I had people who didn't know which way was up when we got done, and she knew I'd gone a quarter of a turn past. Well, Iowa has great section lines. Okay. Well, so I told her that, yes, I really did. And that's the other thing. I get the Great Lakes wrapped up in the spin. It'll take me a turn to get out. I mean, I'm sure there's great aerobatic pilots who can come right on the heading they want, and I want to talk to a few of those and see how they do it, because if you let the thing wind up, it takes a little bit to come out. So, but the 150 would come right out where you wanted it. So, what did I do? Well, hey, I am now a spin expert, so I took all my friends up. I've got 45 hours, and I'm taking everybody up and showing them how to do spins and stuff. Well, another little thing of the Dunning-Kruger effect where you don't know how dumb you are is we didn't go into weather a lot, okay? Didn't cover weather a lot. And I'm driving down to Wellman, where the little grass strip is. This is the grass strip. I've had three dusk, not quite full dark, but three dust landings on. It's a little grass strip right next to a road. Tree at the end, farmhouse. That's how I could identify it, by the farmhouse lights. And my third landing, where it was getting darker, and I come in, there's a big ball of light suddenly appears on the runway and scared me. I realized that was the landing light. I figured I should turn it on because it's night. So I decided I need to check out there. But it's so foggy driving down there. It was hard to drive. I couldn't drive very fast. I go into the outhouse. Literally, when I come out, it's lifted into what I now am pretty sure was a broken deck, but I thought it was scattered at the time. So we take off. I'm going from Wellman, which is in the eastern part of Iowa, to my wife's parents' house in the western part of Iowa, south of Sioux City. And this cloud deck below me that was really broken, now closed in. I'm going over Des Moines, and I'm hearing about this guy in a Bonanza. He's running out of gas, and he's not instrument rated, and he's talking to Des Moines Tower, and he needs to land. And Des Moines Tower comes back and says, well, it's 200.5, say intentions. And I decided I didn't want my wife listening in on that, so I changed frequencies. I went back, tried to see if there was any accident, and I couldn't find an accident listed, so somehow he must have gotten out of it or something. But decided, well, it's time to press on. So we kept going, and fortunately the weather cleared, and I landed. One thing I noticed a lot in my logbook, I talk about encountering carburetor ice. So there was a lot of that. And of course, the second flying I went to, I had 41 hours. No, 46 hours, and I'm going into Moline, Iowa during an air show, so that was kind of fun. But a couple of other things of interest here. I got checked out in a Taildragger, a 7ECA. I had a total time now of 122 hours. I got a 6-hour checkout, and he just signed me off. Dave Lammers, an old aerobatic pilot, signed me off, and I was cleared to fly solo. So I got some endorsements here, okay, that came out later. Well, complex airplane. Well, I checked out in a aero aircraft, we call that a PA. That's a PA-28. I never quite figured out all the Piper methods of labeling aircraft there. But okay, I got that check out, and I had I was up to 103 hours, just 103 hours, just past it. Well, I never got a complex airplane endorsement. Now it has retractable gear, 200 horsepower, and constant speed prop. That counts for complex airplane, high performance airplane. Back then, these endorsements didn't exist. I was just checked out to fly this, and I also decided that I wanted to get my night checkout. So we did that. So I finally got my night checkout. Tailwheel endorsement, never got one of those. And there's a little thing about being grandfathered if you flew it before in 1991, and I flew it back in 73. TSA citizenship verification. I never did that either, but I guess they figured out that I was a citizen. But there's also the high altitude endorsement. Well, that came out in a high altitude and pressurization. That came out, and I had already. I think that came out in let's see, 90. Was it 97? But anyway, I had been checked out as a captain on the 737 in 91, so that didn't apply to me. So I don't have that. But the funny thing is, okay, I had over 1,000 hours as a flight instructor with the Air Force, and at the time, now they do, but at the time, that didn't mean anything to the FAA. I had to go through the full, and I used the GI Bill, fortunately, but I went through the full instructor training to get my CFI, II, and MEI, and I'd already had over 1,000 hours. And the Macklin, I remember, was the instructor. He was a kind of a arrogant guy, let's put it that way. A lot of pilots are, I'm not telling you anything strange, but we needed a spin endorsement. So we went up in a Skipper, which was this was a dealership that had the Skipper, which was the clone of the Piper Tomahawk. So we went up in this, and really flimsy aircraft, and honest to God, we went up to 9,000 feet to do the spins. And this is the first time I had ever seen Macklin nervous. He did not like spins, and I joked to him. I said, boy, that tail looks really flimsy. We sure going to do spins in this. And he was just nervous. We went 9,000 feet. We did one to the left, one to the right. We were done. Okay, we could go home now. And he put that endorsement in my logbook. I thought that was pretty funny. So anyway, that's how things have kind of changed. A lot of endorsements that just didn't exist back then, and apparently obviously grandfathered into virtually all of them. And so that is the change. Now, the thing that they added is the night flying and 10 takeoffs and landing at a tower-controlled airport. And I think both of those are good, because eventually, if you get a license, you're going to have to know how to operate at a tower-controlled airport, and you're also going to have to know how to fly at night, because even if you don't intend to, you can get into it inadvertently. And they should have had a little more emphasis on instrument conditions in flight and avoiding it. But we did the hood thing, so I guess that qualified 1.5 hours. Anyway, that's my 2 cents worth. Thanks for watching.